Our nation looked drastically different exactly a year ago when America and the world nearly changed forever. A radicalized 20-year-old almost took out our future leader at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Those who want to dismantle our free society by any means necessary would have gotten their wish had the assassin not missed by less than a quarter of an inch. Shannon Sauders was also only 20 and attended the rally with her friends. They were sitting close to the stage when they saw President Donald Trump get shot at. In fact, they had nearly swapped their seats with an attendee who was critically injured. Now, Shannon's here to share her take and what it was like seeing it firsthand. Shannon, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you kind of walk us through your firsthand experience that day?
Yeah, what a crazy day. You just don't wake up and think that outcome could have been possible. So we got there bright and early. We wanted to be the first to get in line to have a front row seat. The gates opened at 8 a.m. for outside, and then we were checked in by the Secret Service at 12 p.m. And I remember thinking as I'm vividly walking through the metal detectors, this is the most safe event I've ever been at because the Secret Service are here. And then from there, we went and walked towards the arena area where the rally was actually held, and we waited there for 6 hours. So in total, I waited 10 hours to see Donald Trump. So he was supposed to come at 5, and he came an hour later at 6. And of course, it's the most patriotic atmosphere ever. Like, everyone's rocking out their red, white, and blue. It's just a very fun atmosphere with the music playing. Like, everyone just looks genuinely happy to be there. And he comes out, everyone pulls out their phone, everyone's cheering. And from there, that was like the last normal, 9 minutes of the rally, pretty much. You know, you wait 10 hours and you only get to see him speak for 9 minutes. And, you know, he is talking about immigration. He starts to move in more into his policies. And he brings out a chart because he has 2 TV screens on both sides. And he says, take a look at this chart. And all of a sudden I just hear a gunshot. And I see him immediately go down. And between the crowd's reaction and him going down, my mind just starts racing as it would naturally. And I'm like, I think I'm watching an assassination attempt. And then the shots continue. And my entire row fell on me like a domino. And it is one of the most humbling experiences to think for a split second, am I about to die right now? And that's what I thought, along with laying on the ground with my friend on top of me, just saying, Jesus save me, over and over again. But at the same time, I'm also whipping out my phone because I'm I want to capture this event. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I want to say that I have the pictures on my phone. So while I'm peeking over the seats to see if he's still even alive, the Secret Service is now on top of him, and the crowd is just on the edge of their seats. So what is going on? You know, there's screaming and crying. You know, eventually we hear the one final gunshot, and I'm scared to get up. I'm the gunshot sounded so close to me that I was convinced the shooter was in the audience. And so I start to see people rise, and I'm why are we rising? What's going on right now? But at the same time, I have my camera out and I want to get a picture of what's going on. So the whole audience is just holding their breath. They're we're just hoping that he gets up. And he does. And from there, I'm sure everyone knows, that was one of the most incredible and powerful things I've ever witnessed from a crowd's reaction. Is no one moved, no one ran away, everyone waited there to see if he was going to get up. And he put his fist in the air and said, fight, fight, fight. And the crowd just erupted. And we were all just what just happened? Because he obviously was quickly whisked away. And we were was that adrenaline? Is he going to the hospital and he's going to pass away later? Thinking of the worst thing possible. And as we're trying to process this, it's everything in my mind just goes blank. It's in a scene of a movie. It just doesn't feel real, an out-of-body experience. I see a lot of commotion in the stands, and I look over and I see Corey. And when you see someone whose life ended, you don't look at life the same way. And it's very impactful. You want to start living differently when you see that. And there was just so many things that was happening, and I'm seeing commotion in the other side of the stands on the right side, and there's commotion there as well. But because we were the first 150 people to get in there, we got there so early that we were like, we would like to have cool seats on maybe the side or the back view, maybe to be on TV or have a cool side angle of Trump. But we were like, you know what, it's filling up so quickly, let's just stay in our seats. And we sat around 12 rows from him in the front. Well, the seats that we were plotting to sit in, that we were actually pointing at and being like, let's actually sit there, was the exact seats that someone got shot in. And I went with my 2 friends, and I don't think we would be alive here today if we ended up sitting there. And it's just kind of like, wow, you know, just like a head tilt of a quarter of an inch saved his life, a seat change saved mine. And that's just, you know, my mind always goes back to that being like, wow, that's just crazy to wrap my mind around. And, you know, after they whisked him away, the crowd in front of the cameras, and I'm so close that when it's zoomed out on major medias, you can actually see me calling my parents. But eventually, people just start to turn around and start to cuss out the media, start screaming at them, because they were like, are you enjoying this right now? What you just saw, basically. Are you going to write a story about what we just witnessed? A few minutes later, I would find out that would be true. But in that moment, my phone wasn't working, and we had no signal. Eventually, I found someone with a phone. I'm like, can I use your phone to call my parents? And that's like the worst phone call a parent could ever get, is saying that your child has been in a shooting. And my parents recall it feeling like 9/11, and they were glued to the TV to see if I would even come home that night. And thankfully, I did. And as I'm leaving, we are told that there's a golf cart coming up the hill, and we need to make way. And it is so packed, but I see a man on a stretcher that's unconscious, and there's blood. But he is whisked away so fast. And it's just like, there's helicopters on the scene, there's heavy armed men. And at this point, like, I keep looking behind me. I'm like, where is the shooter? Like, everyone's just walking away. And thankfully, people walked and they didn't run, because that would have been a very dangerous situation. I'm like, I just don't know what's going on. Like, did the Secret Service take out the shooter? And again, like, I don't even know if they're still in the audience. Like, I'm just like walking with the crowd. And we get in the car, and we don't leave the parking lot for about 2 hours, just with like all the traffic. And once we finally got service, my first picture that I took was a fake title article from NBC News that said the Secret Service took Trump off the stage because of a popping noise. And I remember me and my friends were so frustrated in the car. We were like, of course they would try to cover up something instead of just saying the facts. Like, that was an assassination attempt that we just witnessed. And, you know, without knowing what was going on, we were like, we don't even know if he's still alive yet. We don't know if that was just pure adrenaline. We don't know. Everything was so fast. And that was a significant day that changed my perspective on life. And I felt this peace that God wanted me to see that, even if it didn't make sense at first. And with it being a whole year later, I can see why now.
When did it click for you that the seat you were supposed to be in, that you almost switched to, when did you realize that the person in that seat was one of the people injured?
It honestly didn't hit me till a couple of hours later, because we were just like so consumed with what the crowd was doing around us. We were like, is the shooter even down? And we just look over and we see commotion. And it wasn't until I was sitting in the car when things were starting to slow down, I was able to like process it more and talk about it with my friends. We were like, oh my gosh, those were the exact seats that we were going to sit in. And like, we were just like, we could have died. And we're like, but we chose to pull away. And it's an absolute horrible thing to witness.
And you're so young. You were 20 years old at the time. Your parents, you had no service until you get in the parking lot. What did your parents think? When did they find out what were they doing in that moment when he was shot at?
Yes, they were actually going to go see my cousin who was getting baptized that night, and they were getting none of my calls. So they got a call through a random person's phone, and my dad was the one who answered, and they were walking out to the car. They were watching the rally, but the moment they left to go walk out to the car was when everything happened. And between that time of them sitting in the car and trying to find the station to be like, okay, let's watch it or listen to it while we're driving, is when I made the phone call. And I think they were on the road, and they just immediately turned around. They were like, we have to be home for her when she comes back and make sure she is coming back. And, you know, they were just so happy to see me. And of course they had a million questions, and yeah, it's a parent's worst nightmare to know that their kid is in a position and they can't do anything about it.
And also the fact that it was someone else's phone, they probably didn't know at all whether that call was you or whether it was somebody else telling your whereabouts.
Yes. Yeah.
And the legacy media, you saw it firsthand, that row of just callous journalists.
Yes.
Report on this and report on it so differently. You all saw the same horrific acts unfold.
Yep.
What were they doing in that moment? What were their facial expressions like?
Well, we saw a lot of people just moving around the cameras, just trying to get a glimpse of like shots between like probably the stands, just on President Trump while he was being moved to like the Secret Service were just moving him into the cars. But like, you know, people were standing in front of reporting, but they're looking around because how can you be prepared to report on that? But, you know, people were just so upset that they were just taking it out on the media, and rightfully so, because their rhetoric was inspired for an action to happen like that. And yeah.
And this is the same media for 10 years calling everyone a Nazi for disagreeing with the left. They're the same party that accused President Trump and his supporters of inciting violence for their beliefs. And now you saw how the left incited violence. You saw how their rhetoric immediately resorted into violence firsthand. How complicit do you think the legacy media is?
Well, I mean, a few days before the assassination attempt happened, Joe Biden made a post saying, time to put a bullseye on Trump. That needs called out. And like you said, people saying that he wants to, comparing him to like a Nazi, a wannabe dictator, a threat to democracy, people saying he needs to be eliminated. This was not an unprecedented event that just happened. It was inspired by this rhetoric. You know, both sides need to just tone it down and realize that insane people can listen to this and their actions can be caused from this. And that's exactly like what we saw. And even hearing the subpoena for the Secret Service director just a few days later, she couldn't even answer a yes or no question that they were asking her by Congress about the security that day. And it's like, why is this such a cover-up? There's so many answers that Americans need for this day, and we are not getting them. And we still haven't had them like a year later. I know that week after the assassination attempt happened, J.D. Vance was announced as his running mate. The RNC happened a few days later. Joe Biden dropped out of the race. Then Kamala stepped in. That's a lot of news in that short time. So a lot of the news about the shooter got swept under the rug, and Americans still deserve answers on that.
Certainly, and it seems like the legacy media kind of used all those happenings as an excuse to just pretend that the assassination attempt never even existed. We're not even really hearing much about it from the legacy media, even though this is the anniversary. And for an entire year since, we've seen how the left has raised GoFundMe pages supporting these Marxists and alleged killers every time they take out someone in the street who is deemed problematic. And it It's extending beyond political beliefs, but people who are deemed to have or owned too much, people who have different religious beliefs, different races, this attack on whites, Christians, Jews, and the legacy media seems to just continue covering it up, sometimes justifying it. As someone who is interning in the DC area now, where there has been political violence, do you feel safe? Do you think this is going to get worse?
You know, I've had my moments, but I know that I'm protected by God and that He has His hand upon the whole situation. Obviously, I'm very sad about the young intern who passed away from the congressman's office when he was shot and killed in DC. I don't want people to be in fear of coming to DC. This is our nation's capital. It should be as a place where people can see the history unfolding before their eyes. But at the same time, it can have that weight of being like, we live in such a different age where respectfully disagreeing is hard to do. I would love that to happen where it's like, you know, I could say it and someone wouldn't have to bash me for that. But it's, you know, the times are different. But I do think that we can change that and we don't have to be so divided on the issue. You know, I think it really is telling that a 20-year-old went to the Trump rally to go support the new vision for America, to make America great again, and then you have a 20-year-old trying to wipe out the now president. And it just goes to show the divide in our generation, the future of America. And I think people need to step back and be like, what do we want for this country? Do we want people to be solely divided like this? We're ultimately Americans at the end of the day, and something like a tragedy as, you know, an assassination attempt and having people shot, killed, and critically injured is not something that should be politicized and should be, you know, it should be respected. Mm-hmm.
Within just a year alone, you went from witnessing the legacy media cover up firsthand the assassination attempt to working for the Media Research Center, where we call out the legacy media bias and the rhetoric that did cause this assassination attempt and political violence. Mm-hmm. So did that inspire you in any way? What brought you a year later to this place, to your current mission?
Yeah, I've always loved politics. I love public speaking. You can always catch me watching a show, looking at articles throughout the day, just trying to see the facts of the situation and trying to inform others. So that's what I would love to do with my major. And so that event a year ago was like a catalyst to push me more into that direction. If anything, it just made me more passionate about wanting to be bold on these topics, why we need to share the truth more, exposing the media bias. I'm all here for it. The Media Research Center has just been such a great news outlet and just great form of media that I wish more people could know about and can look into seeing how, oh my gosh, they're trying to explain the truth about situations that the media is trying to hide.
Certainly. Well, the answer is more speech.
Yes, yes.
I had something that popped up into my mind when you went through all of this. Mm-hmm. Did any friends, maybe on the other side of the aisle, reach out to you and ask if you're okay?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my phone was blowing up like insanely. I had people calling me for days after. I had friends from, because I go to Liberty University, calling me almost every single day until I came back to school in August. I didn't ask for that, but they did it, and they were praying for me, being like, hey, how are you doing today? How are you doing processing this? And that they just went above and beyond through it. Now, I have had the other side of the spectrum where I've had some friends who have been close friends of mine stop talking to me after it. And you're going to get that with both sides, but I'm taking that as the Lord's direction of showing me who true friends are, and you want to cling to those who actually support you, pray for you, and are here for you.
Of course. Mm-hmm. And what does it say, the fact that the friends who stopped talking to you after you could have nearly, God forbid, have been shot, you were at this assassination attempt, what does that say about them? Because it went beyond politics at that point.
Yeah.
They didn't want to talk to you because you attended a Trump rally, or because of the fact that you were there when almost the worst thing happened.
Yeah. You know, I think it was a true colors moment, and sometimes you're thankful for those moments to be like, okay, that's good to know, and moving on. And, you know, even though that was a really hard time to watch, I think it also was the media, the attention that I was getting too. I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask to be on shows or be written in articles, but you know, I don't know if the attention that they were getting, no one asks for attention when they've gone through something like that. And, you know, that was my first time ever being like exposed to actually being in the news. And so what I've learned from that is just keep your eyes on God every single day. You know, friends come and go, but He will always remain.
What would your message be to the legacy media, but also to the audiences watching it and who watched nationally on TV what unfolded that day?
I would say my biggest message is life is short. You never know when it's going to end, and it can be scary to think about. But once you've seen, when you go through an event when your life flashes before your eyes, you live differently. You live bolder. You realize how much stuff that you put up with, and you're like, I don't want to put up with that anymore. And in a way, it's pushed me so much in a closer direction with my relationship with God. It makes me bold about sharing the gospel, for people to put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ, knowing that you are saved when you do that, and you can trust Him fully, and no matter what tomorrow brings. Yeah.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was really a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much again.